please take a quick second to like and subscribe to the show. It really helps us out and lets us keep bringing this content directly to you.
Absolutely. It makes a huge difference.
So today we are looking at the direct focal point of a massive legislative standoff. It is House Resolution 7744.
Right, which is officially known as the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Act 2026.
Exactly. And for our exploration today, we are utilizing two main materials. We've got the official legislative text of House Resolution 7744, straight from Congress.gov.
And we also have a comprehensive policy and historical analysis report that looks at the bill's text and all the surrounding circumstances.
Right. And our mission for this analysis is to help you understand the sheer financial scope of this legislation, the fierce debates that are completely halting its passage, and the motivations of the politicians involved.
We're also going to look at how this resulting funding freeze directly impacts national security and, honestly, how it impacts everyday citizens like you.
We are going straight to the facts as they're presented in the text.
Great.
To give you a clear view of exactly what is unfolding in Washington right now.
So to start, we need to understand what this legislation actually mechanically does. House Resolution 7744 is designed to provide comprehensive full-year funding for the Department of Homeland Security.
That's for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2026.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the primary sponsor of this legislation is Representative Tom Cole.
He's a Republican from Oklahoma.
He is. And he introduced the bill pushing for something the analysis refers to as clean funding.
Clean funding, which is a very specific legislative concept.
It's the absolute core of Representative Cole's objective here. When they say a clean funding bill, they mean a budget that is completely free of any policy restrictions or operational conditions.
So just the money, no strings attached.
Exactly. His motivation is rooted in the belief that funding national security is a fundamental constitutional duty.
And he argues that Homeland Security is this highly integrated, multidisciplinary endeavor.
Right. The text shows he views these agencies as interconnected parts of a single machine. You can't just segment it.
And you can't use funding for that machine as a political bargaining chip.
That's their primary argument. The sponsors state that you cannot fully fund disaster response agencies while intentionally starving immigration enforcement units.
Because doing that creates a dangerous split in the nation's overall security architecture.
Yeah, that's exactly the sponsor's position.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why is this specific bill and the funding it provides considered so critical by its sponsors right at this exact moment?
Well, there are very immediate threats cited in the text.
Right. The sponsors point out that the United States is facing active cyber vulnerabilities.
Highly sophisticated state-sponsored actors.
Originating in Iran, Russia, and China.
Yes. And these foreign actors are actively targeting CISA.
Which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency.
Right. The sponsors make the case that forcing CISA to operate at a limited capacity due to a funding freeze is an unacceptable risk to the nation's digital defense.
But it's not just the cyber threats, right? There is also a very rigid logistical timeline forcing the issue.
The timeline is critical here. The United States is preparing to host several massive global events.
Events classified as national special security events.
Exactly. We are talking about the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
The America 250 national celebrations.
And looking just a little further ahead, the LA 2028 Olympic Games.
Those are enormous logistical undertakings.
They are massive. And because they're so large, they require years of advanced funding and highly specialized procurement.
Mainly by agencies like the Secret Service and TSA.
Right, the Transportation Security Administration. The sponsors argue that any disruption in continuous funding creates compounding security deficits.
Meaning if you fall behind on that specialized procurement today,
it cannot be easily fixed or caught up once the money eventually starts flowing again.
Despite all those arguments, there is a heavily organized opposition to this bill.
There is.
The opposition is led by Representative Rosa DeLauro in the House of Representatives and Senator Chuck Schumer in the Senate.
And they are steadfastly refusing to fund immigration enforcement agencies unless strict statutory guardrails are attached to the money.
So they want conditions. And the catalyst for this opposition is very specific.
It is entirely rooted in recent events. The analysis points directly to an executive branch initiative launched in December 2025.
Known as Operation Metro Surge.
Yes, Operation Metro Surge, which took place in the Minneapolis area.
The facts of that operation really shift the tone of this entire debate.
They absolutely do.
According to the oversight reports, Operation Metro Surge involved heavily armed, frequently masked federal agents,
Primarily from CBP
Customs and Border Protection,
and ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The reports detail that these federal agents were deployed into interior urban environments.
residential neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, residential neighborhoods, and they conducted warrantless residential raids.
Which ultimately resulted in over 3,000 arrests.
And the situation escalated significantly due to some truly tragic outcomes on the ground.
The federal operations resulted in the fatal shootings of 2 United States citizens.
The first was Renee Nicole Good.
And the second was an intensive care unit nurse named Alex Preddy.
The analysis report details the exact circumstances surrounding Alex Preddy. It states that he suffered multiple gunshot wounds.
With federal agents firing at least 10 shots.
And notably, the report confirms that 5 of those shots were discharged after he lay motionless on his back on the ground.
To compound that already terrible situation, the FBI formally refused to share any information or evidence regarding Preddy's death.
They refused to share it with state investigators from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
When you look at those details, it becomes very clear why the political opposition is digging their heels in so firmly.
Right. And there was another incident during Operation Metro Surge that went viral and heavily influenced this debate.
A 5-year-old boy named Liam Conejo Ramos.
He was detained in his driveway. The reports note he was wearing a Spider-Man backpack at the time.
Having just returned from preschool.
That specific incident led to a scathing emergency release order from U.S. District Judge Fred Biery,
who vehemently condemned the detentions.
These specific events completely transformed the appropriations debate for the opposition.
They view the passage of a clean funding bill,
one without any policy conditions,
as a direct financial endorsement of these tactical methods.
Exactly. And because of that perspective, the opposition has laid out a very specific set of demands.
They are refusing to pass the funding unless House Resolution 7744 includes a list of mandatory changes.
First, they are demanding mandatory judicial warrants for property entry,
which would effectively end the practice of warrantless residential raids.
Right. They also want a complete statutory ban on masks for these federal agents,
paired with a mandate for highly visible badge numbers on all uniforms.
Accountability is the central theme of all these demands.
That ties right into their next demand, which is universal body cameras for all agents out in the field.
This is a massive point of contention. The reports note that nearly 80% of ICE agents currently do not consistently wear body cameras.
80%?
Yes. Additionally, the opposition is demanding independent investigations of misconduct.
Specifically, they want to strip the Department of Homeland Security of its exclusive internal review privileges.
The goal of that provision is to ensure that state and local authorities have the jurisdiction to investigate lethal shootings.
Like the one involving Alex Preddy.
Exactly. And finally, they want strict protection for sensitive community locations.
This provision would make it illegal for agents to conduct surveillance or execute arrests near schools, hospitals, and places of worship.
So on one hand, you have the demand for a clean bill to address imminent global and cyber threats.
And on the other hand, you have the demand for rigorous statutory guardrails regarding how these agencies operate domestically.
Which brings us to the actual financial impact of the bill.
And the staggering amount of dollars at stake here.
Right. Now, the exact top-line discretionary dollar amount for the entirety of House Resolution 7744 for 2026 isn't the sole focus of the immediate summaries.
But we can look at the historical baseline to understand the scale.
And that comparison is incredibly helpful for you as the listener. During a similar funding standoff a decade prior, in 2015, the baseline budget was $39.7 billion.
Given inflation, agency expansion, and technological modernization, the 2026 budget being debated right now is massively larger.
Just looking at the text of the resolution itself, it includes $17.7 billion allocated strictly for CBP operations.
It also includes an incredible $26.3 billion designated for the FEMA Disaster Relief Fund.
However, the legislative friction is really located in the specific microallocations within that massive budget.
The opposition is specifically targeting recent procurement records.
For instance, they are highlighting over $144 million in weapons and ammunition contracts, specifically designated for ICE and CBP.
They are also pointing to a highly controversial 5-year contract worth $220 million.
That specific contract is designed to arm ICE agents with advanced tasers,
These are the exact line items that the opposition wants to freeze.
or conditioned upon the implementation of body cameras and warrants.
There is also a major controversy regarding the procurement of aviation assets.
Right, the controversy over the jets.
Representative DeLauro has argued there is severe fiscal hypocrisy occurring at the executive level.
She specifically targets Secretary Kristi Noem's procurement of 2 luxury private jets.
These aircraft were purchased at a taxpayer cost of nearly $200 million.
And the authorization for that purchase actually occurred during a previous government shutdown.
In response to that, Representative DeLauro's substitute legislation takes a very aggressive stance
It proposes seizing those private jets entirely.
and reallocating them to the Coast Guard to be used for maritime security missions.
It is clear that the debate over this money goes far beyond just balancing a spreadsheet
It is deeply tied to how these agencies function.
and what equipment they use to execute their mandates. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can see exactly how the failure to pass this bill directly impacts you, the listener.
And the broader public right now.
Because the federal budget is frozen, various crucial platforms are offline. For example, the FEMA Geo platform is entirely non-operational.
And the practical effect of that system being down is immediate for local communities.
Because FEMA Geo is frozen, local first responders cannot access federal emergency grants.
The reports highlight the North Farms Volunteer Fire Department in Connecticut.
Right. Because of this legislative deadlock in Washington, that local volunteer department cannot get vital, life-saving gear.
Or heavy-duty personal protective equipment.
Furthermore, the administrative processing for the National Flood Insurance Program is completely stalled.
That has an enormous ripple effect.
It really does. The stalling of the National Flood Insurance Program creates a massive bottleneck in the domestic real estate market.
People simply cannot close on homes in flood-prone regions.
Because the federal paperwork cannot be processed.
Then you have to look at the toll on the workforce itself.
The Department of Homeland Security has 260,000 employees.
Because of the shutdown stemming from this stalled bill, 72% of that workforce,
Which is over 185,000 people.
are legally classified as essential.
That means they are required to continue working without pay.
The financial strain on those individuals is immense.
The reports specifically cite alarming examples of TSA agents who are currently sleeping in their cars.
Because they cannot afford the gas for their daily commutes.
There are also reports of federal workers resorting to selling blood plasma.
Just to be able to feed their families while they wait for their back pay.
Beyond the immediate financial pain for those workers and the halt of FEMA grants, there are long-term unintended consequences to this legislative impasse.
Absolutely. By underfunding CISA over an unrelated immigration dispute, the nation is voluntarily lowering its digital shields.
Against foreign cyber attacks from the state-sponsored actors we mentioned earlier.
The longer the agency goes without proper funding, the more vulnerable the digital infrastructure becomes.
There is also severe institutional atrophy occurring across multiple branches. The Coast Guard is currently experiencing massive recruiting backlogs.
Because the civilian personnel who process security clearances are furloughed.
So the Coast Guard cannot intake the new recruits they desperately need to maintain readiness.
We must also acknowledge the psychological toll detailed in the reports.
Specifically regarding minority communities, the analysis notes a pervasive climate of fear stemming from Operation Metro Surge.
Parents are reportedly keeping their children home from school.
And individuals are avoiding necessary medical care.
Simply due to the presence of masked federal patrols in their neighborhoods.
So, looking at all of these factors,
The global threats, the tactical disputes, the billions of dollars, and the everyday people caught in the middle.
where does the bill actually stand right now?
Right. So where does this actually stand right now?
To understand where the bill stands, we just look at the mechanical facts of the legislative steps.
Representative Cole advanced House Resolution 7744 through the House of Representatives.
Using what is known as a closed rule.
A closed rule is simply a parliamentary mechanism that strictly blocks the introduction of any floor amendments by rank-and-file members.
It forces an up or down vote on the text exactly as it is written.
Using that closed rule, the bill passed strictly along party lines by a record vote of 221 to 209.
Representative DeLauro did introduce a motion to recommit the bill to committee.
which is a procedural move to alter the legislation.
But that motion failed by a vote of 212 to 217.
So what does this all mean?
The probability of the bill passing the Senate in its current unamended form is highly unlikely.
We know this based on recent legislative precedent.
A nearly identical measure, House Resolution 7147, already failed to overcome a Senate filibuster,
That procedural motion failed by a vote of 51 to 45.
which falls well short of the 60 votes required to advance legislation in the Senate.
Because the Senate is steadfast in demanding the operational reforms that the House explicitly refuses to include.
So there is a total bicameral deadlock. The two chambers are at a complete standstill.
To summarize our exploration today, House Resolution 774 represents a fundamental clash between two completely incompatible visions of federal responsibility.
On one side, you have the desire for unconstrained, robust national security funding to meet imminent global and digital threats.
On the other side, you have an unyielding demand for strict civil liberties protections and rigorous law enforcement accountability.
This raises an important final question for you to consider, which builds on the historical context provided in our sources.
Back in 2015, funding standoffs were largely about abstract administrative policies and legal interpretations.
Today, the crisis is entirely different. It is about the physical, kinetic use of force by officers on the street.
Going forward, will the American funding process permanently evolve so that the entire budget of federal law enforcement agencies is held hostage by the localized tactical actions of a few individual agents?
It is a profound question, and one that will definitely shape the future of how these agencies operate.
Thank you so much for joining us for this exploration of the sources. We appreciate you taking the time to understand the facts with us, and we look forward to bringing you more in the future.